We're in the midst of a major pandemic. People are losing their lives. It's getting pretty scary. We're also facing a major economic crisis, which is also getting scary. And all of this is happening in an election year, which is freaky and weird. Which brings me to the subject of this segment. Joe Rogan discussing on his podcast Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. And he likened it to Mike Tyson versus a 3-year-old. And yes, we all know who the Mike Tyson is in that analogy. Donald Trump is going to mop the floor with Joe Biden. His guest said it's going to be like a Comedy Central roast. Yeah, Joe's completely right. When asked by his guest about whether or not he would have more political guests on, because, Rogan had on Bernie. People really liked it. Joe basically says no, because when he goes through this, the media, the establishment try to smear him and make him seem like a right-wing dude. This is where things get interesting. I definitely want to read you through this story about what he said about Biden and Mike Tyson. But I want to show you something fascinating. You see, Joe Rogan recently said he'd rather vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden. The important factor there is over Joe Biden, not for Trump. What he's basically saying, and he clarified, he'd vote for Whoopi Goldberg over Joe Biden. He'd vote for Mike Tyson over Joe Biden. The Mike Tyson analogy is coming out strong in the past week, huh? He's basically saying, and I'll read you the quote, that Joe Biden, he says this, in the, suffering or dealing with early stage dementia, you can't have that guy be in the most stressful position in the world. But Joe Rogan says something truly fascinating. Check this out. Dan Crenshaw is a politician. Let me read you this. They say over the weekend, Rogan went viral with an excerpt from his podcast with guest Eric Weinstein. The clip in question found the podcast host affirming he'd vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden, which of course sparked a healthy amount of debate and backlash. In Rogan's latest podcast episode, 1454 with Dan Crenshaw, Rogan dives back into the political talk and clarifies his remarks from the last episode. Crenshaw is a politician himself and former United States Navy SEAL, and spoke to Rogan about the government's approach to COVID-19 as well as the presidential race, among other things. Quote, "I'm on the left, but I find myself more and more getting confused," Joe Rogan tells Crenshaw, who himself leans more to the right. I know what you're feeling, man. I totally agree. Let me show you a story from Vox, July 2019. Then I want to go to his comments about Mike Tyson. We'll have a little bit of fun with it, and we'll make fun of the system. But check out this story. Democrats are learning the wrong lesson from Donald Trump. He ran as a moderate, and it worked. I'll tell you why people like Joe are probably getting confused. I don't want to speak for him. I don't know what he's thinking. But when I hear people like Joe say, I'm on the left, but I'm confused, or I'm getting more and more confused, I'll tell you what, man, I have tons of friends who lifelong progressive lefties, and then as soon as you start talking to them about what's going on, they start sounding conservative because Trump as a moderate is called far right by much of the press and the activist base. Look, Trump did run as a moderate on many, many things. He was more nationalistic, and I don't want to say far right because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But there were a few things he went completely overboard on, in my opinion. But for the most part, when you even look at the New York Times, they say that Donald Trump pulled the Republican Party a teeny bit to the left. And Vox is even saying it right now. So when you hear all day and night from the activists in media, and I'm not talking about all the journalists, I'm talking about the weird high profile ones who tend to dominate political discourse, that Trump is far right. We just had someone, Kyle Kalinske, progressive, I think he's a good dude, said that he's not going to support Biden. And if you want to blame him, by all means, go ahead and blame him. And then you can think about how you need to get his support in the future to win. Excellent point. To which another high-profile political activist said something like Trump was a white nationalist. It's absolutely insane when even Vox's Matthew Iglesias will say Trump is a moderate. This leaves many center, left, and moderate type people being like, I don't get it anymore because I thought I was on the left. But I don't know why they're doing it, but these leftists are sabotaging themselves by accusing Trump of being far to the right, because then you'll end up with people like Joe Rogan saying I was on the left, but I'm getting more and more confused. I want to make sure I read you the full context of what Joe is saying. He's basically saying he'd vote for anyone over Biden. I try to be fair, but let's check out this because the lead story is actually a bit funny. Joe Rogan on Trump-Biden matchup like Mike Tyson versus a 3-year-old. Podcast host Joe Rogan and comedian Brendan Schaub, who used to be an MMA fighter, went off on Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden late last week, saying that President Donald Trump is going to steamroll Biden in the election. Quote, "It shows you how crazy the system is that they wanted him," Rogan said. That they wanted Biden to be their guy. That they don't They can't admit he's in cognitive decline. I mean, it's very strange. He said, look, if someone wants to ask me questions about things that I understand, like MMA or like comedy, like if you want to ask me questions about things that I think about and talk about all the time, I could talk to you and really clearly, really clearly about those things and make a lot of sense, Rogan continued. Biden can't do that about politics, and he's been a politician forever. He's a guy who's suffering. Schaub says there's no way he beats Trump. He doesn't beat Trump, Rogan responded. No, those two face off. Trump's going to light him up like a Comedy Central roast, Schaub said. I love that comment. That made me laugh the most. It is. Trump is going to go nuts on Biden. Biden's going to, man, I almost don't want to see it. It's kind of sad. I think Trump might actually, I think we know Trump could light him up like a Comedy Central roast. I honestly think Trump is going to be shaking his head being like, this is not okay, man. You know, because Biden's going to be sitting there shaking and muttering and mumbling, and Trump's going to be like, this is not acceptable. Like, why are you putting on the stage like this? What are you doing to this man, you know? He said, quote, Trump's already dismissing Biden, Rogan said. He's going to destroy him. He's going to kill him, man. I mean, it's such an easy target. It's like Mike Tyson versus a 3-year-old. Here's the best part, though. It's the beginning. Check this out. Joe Rogan said it's a weird time because it's right before the election. You know, election comes in November. Imagine if this was going on right now and the election was next week. Brendan says, your boy Bernie dropped out. Rogan replies, yep, it's a wrap. There it is. Look, I don't think Bernie could have beat Trump, but come on, man. Joe Biden, I can say it 50 million times. Schaub said, Biden ain't beating Trump. Nope, that's your best. That's your guy. Rogan says, it shows you how crazy the system is. So that's the part we read. Now check this out. You want to talk about how absolutely insane it is. Joe Rogan is a guy who typically finds himself on the left. He says he is, he thinks he is. There are a lot of things he's actually on the right about. I think Joe's actually just kind of a slightly center left moderate kind of guy. Interestingly, very, very pro Bernie for a lot of reasons. And Joe actually, as far as I know, the last time I heard him talk about it, I'm pretty sure he's fairly pro universal basic income. So he's a pretty lefty guy on a lot of issues. He's a little bit more conservative on some issues. I think he's rather pro 2A. But here's what's fascinating. Check this out. Breaking news. I didn't want to do a breaking news segment, but check it out. This is breaking news. Obama set to endorse Biden's White House bid. The forthcoming endorsement was confirmed by the former president's aides and Biden campaign officials. Are these people nuts? I get it, man. What else can you do? Barack Obama waited until there was nothing else to be done and then endorsed Joe Biden. Now, there are some rumors that when Bernie started doing really well, Barack Obama intervened and basically went to these other Democrats like Buttigieg and Klobuchar and said, drop out, endorse Biden. We can't have this. And there were rumors before that Obama said he would absolutely intervene if it looked like Bernie was doing well. They really, really don't want Bernie. But that shows you it's not about what the American people want. It's supposed to be. It's not. It's about what the establishment wants. And the establishment wants to lose more than they want Bernie to win. Or maybe there's a better way to put it. They would rather lose. It's preferable to them than to see a Bernie Sanders victory. They don't want that guy. I mean, there's some reasons that it's fair to point out. Bernie Sanders isn't a Democrat. He's always been an independent, and he's a socialist, and the far left is encroaching on the Democratic Party. But ultimately, shouldn't matter. I don't like the idea that private organizations, the parties, dominate our presidential system, our political system for whatever reason. That's how it is, and it's a problem. So if the people say they want Bernie Sanders, then so be it. Now, I do think it's fair to point out Bernie lost, so the people didn't want him. But to see them endorse Joe Biden and everyone get behind a guy who everyone knows is not all there. Fascinating. Isn't it truly fascinating? But let's jump back over to Joe Rogan's comments. Now, I do have to make one more point. I do find it silly when I do videos about Joe because he does something, you're like, I'm not trying to compare what we do in any sense. Like, Joe's got the biggest podcast in the world. Cool dude, comedian, world famous, but he is one of the most influential people speaking about culture and politics, whether he likes it or not. So when he does a show and reaches all of these people, it's significantly influential. I understand there are similar things, based on how many people I reach. I certainly don't reach nearly as many people as he does, but I get it. When I look at Joe making these comments, I see something similar to how I view the world. I like listening to his podcast because I'm like, dude, I agree. You know what I mean? When he says Biden's in cognitive decline, it just sounds like something we all know. And then when he says, I'll read the quote again. I'm on the left, but I find myself more and more getting confused. Rogan tells Crenshaw, who himself leans more to the right. Dude, I felt that way a couple of years ago. It's the exact same way so many of my friends felt. I look at the policies the Democrats were pushing, 8 years ago, and I'm like, I thought that all made sense. Now we're at a point where they're not even arguing for these policies anymore. I'll tell you what the weirdest thing is to me about all of this. Is there even a policy discussion happening at this point? What does it mean to be left or right? It used to be like pro-life, pro-choice, progressive tax, flat tax, more tax, low tax, small government, big government, government expansion. Those arguments don't even exist anymore. So some people have argued there's a new left and a new right, and that it's just tribal and policy has nothing to do with it. And if that's the case, then people like me and Rogan would technically be on the right, even though Rogan supports Bernie Sanders. I mean, you look at the Bernie supporters, they're being accused of propping up Donald Trump by refusing to support Biden. You look at some of the policies that, Trump has pushed recently, and you've actually had some progressives laughing and supporting Trump. Trump entertained the possibility, I want to be very careful here, of expanding Medicare to uninsured people. And all of a sudden, all these Bernie people on Twitter were like, do it, Trump, do it. Like, it would be hilarious because the establishment Democrats didn't want to do it. Trump ran as a moderate. Even Vox says so. So how does someone reconcile that when they're being told that Trump is far right and you're like, Trump's not that bad. I agree with some of the things he's done. All of a sudden now you must also be right wing or far right. But back to the main point. When was the last time there was a sit down between like a Democrat and a Republican and they argued over a flat tax or small government? It doesn't happen anymore. We've been so entrenched in cultural issues and personality issues that really the left and the right today almost has nothing to do with policy. I mean, take a look at me, for instance. I rag on the Democrats all the time. It's like basically what I rag on. Granted, we're in the midst of this major election cycle, and I'm no fan of them. And I was a big fan of Andrew Yang. So was Joe Rogan. Yet they call him right wing when he interviews Bernie Sanders or says he likes Bernie Sanders. They call him all these really awful names. They do similar things to me. Where are any of us supposed to sit? Like, I don't even understand how the system functions anymore. There is no left. There is no right. Nothing makes sense. But I guess we can all agree that Donald Trump will mop the floor with Joe Biden. But let me read you this quote from Joe, because he wanted to clarify his point about Trump. He said, it's more of a mystery now because I said I wouldn't vote for Biden. I said I would vote for Trump over Biden. All these people went crazy. But let me be clear. I'd vote for Whoopi Goldberg over Joe Biden. I'd vote for Mike Tyson over Joe Biden. I just don't think it's a good idea to take someone who's struggling with dementia and put him in one of the most stressful positions the world has ever known. That's what I'm saying. It's not an endorsement of Trump as it is me saying you shouldn't have a man who is clearly in the throes of dementia. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but when you can't form sentences in public and you forgot what you're talking about and you wander off in these conversations, if you're not smoking pot, if you're not high, if you're not on pills, what's going on? There's cognitive decline. He's an older man that has mental issues. Not to be cruel to him, he's suffering medically. It's a real issue. And the Democrats want to sweep that under the rug, and Trump is already chewing him apart. He's already dismissing him. I completely agree. So many people they've kept asking me at what point would I support Donald Trump? They were like, what would it take for you to vote for Trump? A few months ago, I said something like, if he appointed Tulsi Gabbard to a national security position of some sort, maybe an advisor, had Andrew Yang as an economic or policy advisor, and then withdrew troops from the Middle East, I'd probably walk right in with a smile on my face and slam that, vote down for Trump. Because those are the things I truly care about. The pulling out of the Middle East goes hand in hand with Tulsi Gabbard as an advisor because I think she'd do great. Many conservatives have said something similar, which is also weird. It's like, hey, we agree. She's a progressive. Andrew Yang has a bunch of really amazing policy ideas. Now, I am not happy that both of them have endorsed Joe Biden. I don't get it. I would, you know what, man? Look, I can respect that they both said they would support the nominee. I'm sorry. I would never say that, and I would never do that. If I came out and said, look, here are my policy plans, and they'd be very similar to Andrew Yang, minus the UBI stuff, probably. I like what he's thinking. I'd want to play around with some of those ideas he's had, but he's got a ton of really amazing policy positions on everything else. Very comprehensive, very well thought out mission statement. Tulsi Gabbard, of course, the anti-war position for the most part. But if it were me, and someone asked me, would you endorse that on me? I'd be like, nope, because if it's Joe Biden, sorry, it ain't going to happen. And voters feel that way. When they did the polling, they found even Andrew Yang's supporters Around half of them said they would not vote for the nominee unless it was Yang. I agree with that. I think most people in this country don't expect you to just throw your weight behind somebody who clearly can't be the president. It's absolutely baffling to me. So for me right now, people have asked, again, what would it take for me to vote for Donald Trump? Well, the bar's been lowered substantially. I don't have TDS. I am no crazy person. I am a regular American, sort of. But I'm fairly moderate politically. You know, my interests, my focus lies more on global affairs, foreign policy. Domestic policy is beyond my area of expertise in many ways. Now, of course, I'm very critical of left-wing, fiscal policy in many different respects, but I'm rather pro-social justice in the non-authoritarian respects. So I looked at Donald Trump and I look at his candor, his demeanor. I don't like it. To me, that's not disqualifying within reason. I would prefer a president who didn't speak the way that Donald Trump did. But when it comes to policy issues, when it comes to bringing our factories back from China, what can I say? He was right. When it comes to border security, he's holding a position that Democrats have held for decades and all of a sudden just abandoned. The bigger issue right now is, look, man, I don't know. All I know is Trump's a potty mouth. And to me, I don't care if he is. All right, there's some issues with that. I don't care if people laugh at us. I don't care if other countries in the world are making fun of the United States. I really don't care about their opinions. I don't care. Is Donald Trump an effective president? I'll tell you what. I can say definitively yes in certain areas. And you know what the problem is? Instead of the Democrats coming out and having a policy argument, they've just tried pushing scandals and insults. So here I'll tell you what I know. I know that Donald Trump is nasty. I know that he's orange. I know that he says mean things. I don't care about any of that. I know that he said China had our manufacturing that was bad, and he said it for a decade or longer, and now something's being done about it. And he was right considering what's going on with the pandemic. I know that he was right about border security because even Bernie Sanders has repeated it. So what am I supposed to conclude? I'll tell you what, man. I am a moderate voter looking for someone, and you've got to make a good argument to me. Right now, the Democrats have made no such argument other than the president is a bad person. Yeah, I don't care. Barack Obama killed a kid. You want me to vote for somebody and you just had a guy who had a drone to go blow up a 16-year-old American and you think I'm going to be complaining about Trump's potty mouth? I mean, I'll complain about both of these things. One's substantially worse. So you're trying to convince me who to vote for. Man, I don't know. Make a policy argument. They didn't. They did not. So right now, I'll tell you what's happening. You got Donald Trump with a few victories under his belt that I can recognize, and Joe Biden who says mumble for Bridgel Gerdizel Schmidt. I have no idea what that means when Biden goes, you come out and the policies, and we got shortages with the oatmeal and the cars. You got to do it. And I'm just like, what? And then the Democrats come out and endorse him. And I'm like, you had people with good ideas. I liked Tulsi. I liked Yang. And they endorsed the guy. Now, I lose a little bit of respect for that. I get it. It's a political game. It's a dirty, dirty business. But I'm sitting here, man, and you got a guy like Trump, and the way he talks and the way he acts, I don't like it. I really don't. I would prefer not to vote for the guy. But if you put him up against Joe Biden, and I'm staring down the barrel of a guy who can't think at all, who's clearly in cognitive decline, you're freaking me out now, man. I might much rather prefer a potty mouth dude over someone who's going to accidentally press the button, the nukes. It's funny that they said, over and over again about Donald Trump, you can't give him access to the nuclear arsenal. He's sporadic. He's irrational, blah, blah, blah. And I agree. I'm like, Trump very much, shoots from the hip. He acts on a whim. He's impulsive. Not a big fan. He's been right about a few things that he's really, really hammered on about for a long time. And I totally respect that. So here I am. And that balances out. Puts me at right now like, the foreign policy stuff I don't like. He did that missile strike in Syria. He's selling weapons overseas, things I just really am not a fan of, American imperialism style stuff. There's been no argument made by the Democrats about why I should oppose any of that. And so I'm sitting here like, well, I know why I don't like it. But I know if I vote for Biden, he's a remnant of the Obama era where they were going up and blowing up kids and stuff. So why would I support that? I'm not going to do it. So this is where it leaves me rather confused. Who should I vote for? I don't know, man. I'll tell you what. If you want to yell at people like Kyle Kalinske because you say he's supporting Trump and he says in a tweet, fine, go ahead and blame me, then you can try and figure out how to win my support over next time. I love that sentiment. I'll say the same thing. If you're wondering why I'm sitting here saying Trump is a better option than Biden, and you are blind. And I'll tell you what, I'm willing to be convinced. I want to hear it. But you on the Democrats have presented me with nothing other than incessant scandals. Scandal, 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 investigation, oversight. I don't care. I really don't. We're in the midst of a pandemic. The president is doing the best he can, for better or for worse, and I don't think he's done the best job in the world, but I think he's doing a fairly good one. He had this big press event where he railed on the press. I thought it was silly. I roll my eyes, but ultimately it's whatever, man. I have nothing else to compare it to, except for Obama and his extrajudicial assassinations. Sure, the guy had a tan suit. That was his scandal. Come on, he had a bunch of other scandals. So right now, that's what I see. And instead of coming to me and saying, Tim, take a look at these things. Here's our plan. Here's our mission. What do? When the moderates got elected, they just went for impeachment. That to me was the most annoying thing ever. I thought they were going to do kitchen table issues. I said it over and over again. I'm like, hey, man, the Democrats, if they came out. Now we got this woman, Michelle Caruso Cabrera, who's running against AOC. This might be a light at the end of the tunnel because she is a moderate, rational Democrat challenging AOC up in her district. I really hope she wins. I do. Because you read what Michelle Caruso Cabrera talks about. You should check her out if you haven't. It's New York 14. And it sounds like she's making sense, talking about small business, protecting this stuff. And it's from what used to be a sane, slightly left-wing, center-left position. And I'm like, that's what we need to get back to. If we can get back Democrats who, instead of focusing on orange man bad, instead of focusing on like, hey, we need to lower costs. Hey, we need to boost the economy. Let's work with the Republicans to get the job done. And then we can argue about cultural issues, Supreme Court picks and all that stuff. I'm totally down. That's not what's happening. The Republicans are pushing through judge after judge after judge, and the Democrats say nothing about it. So I don't know what you expect of me, someone like Joe, or anyone else. Rogan. But Biden is not viable, and he freaks me out. Now, Bloomberg was also freaky. But at this point with Biden, I'm looking at a guy who can't talk. You want to put that guy in front of Vladimir Putin? You are insane. You look, Donald Trump. They say all this weird stuff about him and Putin. Donald Trump is, you see how he treats the press. You see how his attitude is. And I'm not a fan, but I'll tell you what. You put Donald Trump's imposing visage and angry face in front of other countries, and they know that the dude's sporadic, impulsive, and arrogant. It's going to be a tough position to negotiate with that guy. You put Joe Biden, he's going to be sitting there confused, and they're going to be like, just sign here, Joe. And he's going to go, oh, yeah, I signed here. And then he's going to sign away what he's not even going to know what he's signing. So tell me why that makes sense. I'm listening, but I don't think you're gonna. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. at youtube.com/Timcast, my main channel, and I will see you then.